someone here who I have only just met like 5 minutes ago. Ben, you want to introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll get to chopping it up?
Sure, thanks, Jake. Ben, based out of Singapore, the other half of Hybrid Health, along with Dan, who Jake interviewed a couple of weeks ago. So, based in Singapore, I lived here for a little over 2 years. Excited to talk to you about hybrid health and give you additional insights that maybe Dan didn't get to cover the last time he was on.
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you guys got a bunch of stuff you got to knock out, so thanks for coming in and agreeing to have this little conversation here, man.
No problem. Happy to.
Sweet. So before we get to hybrid health and getting into some of the deets, just give me a little bit of background about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Just, kind of run through that real quick.
Yeah, I mainly grew up in the U.S. in Indiana plus Connecticut. So second half of my childhood was in Connecticut. Played a variety of sports growing up: soccer, lacrosse. Um, anything I could really get my hands on, basketball,
Do you have a
etc.
favorite?
To play, probably soccer.
Cool.
But neither of those did I particularly excel in. And then went to University of Connecticut, so a basketball school, so enjoy watching sports and enjoy watching my sports teams win.
Who do
And
you root
then
for?
what's that?
Who do you root for?
For professional or for college?
Both.
So for college, UConn, because I went there.
Sure.
And I've flown back a couple times to see them win championships. And then from a professional standpoint, all the Boston teams. So
Okay, cool.
Growing up in Connecticut in early 2000s to about 2016, it was nice to watch Tom Brady. And then from a basketball standpoint, Celtics. So those are the main two sports I'd follow: football and NBA. Moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I started at IBM, and later down the line, I moved to San Francisco, working with Dan. And that's where he and I met. We'd go to a couple of different Barry's classes every single week. We didn't work together per se, but we were in the same office.
Okay, I got
that's
you.
kind of where our friendship began.
Where did you study, or what did you study when you were at UConn?
I studied a couple of different things, but primarily marketing, sales, and international business.
What drove you to making that your field of study?
Yeah, since I was about 15, I always wanted to get into international business, and that's partly because my dad was in a similar type of role, and it was cool to watch him travel 2 to 3 weeks every single month all over the world, dealing with different cultures, different types of industries, people, etc. And I also like food, so I was like, okay, that'd be cool to get paid to travel and explore and interact with different people. So that brought me to. After I spent a couple of years in San Francisco, I moved to Colombia, South America for a year, and was managing a couple of teams at my current tech company that was based down there. That was during COVID, primarily. And then came back to the U.S. for a little bit, and then came out to Singapore about almost 2.5 years ago. And then I've been in Singapore ever since. Part of the reason why I wanted to come to Singapore was the access to the surrounding area. So I like to hike and I like to scuba dive. So this does provide me with some of that. My mom's from Malaysia, so I do have family that are Singaporean. My dad's from India, so I also have family in this part of the world. When I went to university in the U.S., my entire family moved to Jakarta, Indonesia, with my dad's job because he was taking on an APAC Asia role.
Sweet.
And so I was a little jealous that all my siblings and my parents got to do a stint in Asia, and I did not. So I wanted
Catching up.
Yeah.
How many siblings do you have?
Three. I have two sisters, and then the youngest is a brother.
And
Yeah,
where do you fit in that mix?
I'm the oldest. So
Oh, big bro. Okay, that's cool.
yeah, yeah.
Very nice. So you went to UConn, and what was there an in between chapter you said between UConn and San Fran or San Diego?
Yeah, same friend. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, for a little bit. Only I did an internship there for a summer, and then the following year I joined IBM there. But I was only there for about 6 months, and then IBM said, "Hey, we actually want you to help us develop our business in Silicon Valley because we are losing out to the likes of Amazon, Google, and Microsoft." And so they sent me out to San Francisco, and a year later, I think Dan, my co-founder, ended up moving to San Francisco as well,
Okay,
also joining IBM, and yeah, that's how we got acquainted.
sweet. So what was your role at IBM? What were you doing?
Yeah, I was initially in financial services sales, so selling to banks and the likes of Stripe, Coinbase, Robinhood when they were significantly smaller. And this is the first time like the Bitcoin kind of boom happened when it hit about 20K and everyone was going crazy over that. So I started in financial services sales, and then shifted over to partnerships. So partnering with other tech companies that are building solutions for mutual customers of ours.
Okay, very nice. That's pretty cool. So you started to rack up this experience, and you knew kind of around the age of 15 that international business was going to be something that you were going to be pursuing. Were you starting to get the entrepreneurial bug at that point? Were you kicking around ideas? Had you thought about starting anything before jumping into hybrid health?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of my dream has always been to start something. I mean, even at that point, I had run a couple of entrepreneurial type ventures, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing too crazy, nothing along the lines of what we're doing now. But it was more so to kind of dip my toes in and see how things were going. And I just like the ability to kind of control my own destiny if I have the opportunity to do so instead of just making money for someone else. So yes, and then the other part of that is I've always been interested in the health and nutrition space,
Okay.
just because of like how much that can change someone foundationally, where they might be in, and especially I think being in San Francisco, like you have a lot of overachievers, but you also have a lot of stress related to the lifestyle and the work that you're doing. And so I had a lot of friends that weren't spending too much time taking care of their bodies, and that would show. And so like how can you make that easier, more accessible, or more convenient, if you will. So the supplement space has always been interesting, and then on the other hand of that, you have like the supplement space also being kind of a gray, like a black hole, where you don't know what's going into the actual creation of the supplement, what's marketing fluff and what's real, and where's there like actual science backing something up, and where's there someone just trying to push their own agenda. And so it for me it's kind of always been a mystery and something that is interesting for me to poke around and pry out what's real and what's not. And when you do that, you find that a lot of things are there just for dollars, right? It's a dollar
Yep.
driven industry, of course, but fundamentally for someone like myself, like, and probably yourself, I care about like other people getting better, not worse. And so that's kind of
Well said.
that's kind of the part of the inspiration behind that as well, which is like, how do you make a difference in the world? One thing is like doing something that is better for people, not worse.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I started telling clients, whether it was personal training, group fitness, whatever, early on, whatever their goals were, whether it was aesthetic based, performance based, any sort of a goal, look, that's going to happen with over time with consistency. But one
Mhm.
thing you're going to feel after the very first workout and those endorphins kick in, you're going to feel like you're relaxed. You're going to feel like you can handle the current stress load you have a little bit better,
Yeah.
and everything else is going to seem like not as big of a deal. And that's going to happen after the first workout, and it will compound after each one. And so I think your point about just stress management and exercise being a gateway to that, I think moving even further down the line, supplementation is also something. If you're drinking plenty of water, but you're short on magnesium, potassium, sodium, whatever, you don't even know what it feels like to have all the processes in your body run at 100%. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you get your micronutrients in, and oh my gosh, I actually feel just a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, the way I equate it is it's, your body runs like it's a battery, right? And so if you're not getting the right amount of sleep, if you're not getting the right amount of nutrition or the correct amount of nutrition, as much as you want to operate at 100%, you won't be able to, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with like just drinking water. Like if you're not drinking enough water, your organs, which are primarily made up of water and need water to function, are not able to operate at 100%. So your liver, your kidney, everything, right? So for me, I think it's super important to figure out how can you get to that 100%. And one of
Right.
those ways is by implementing certain habits like getting the right numbers, the amount of sleep, drinking the right amount of water, or hydrating yourself correctly, getting in um, the right amount of nutrition, right?
Totally. Totally. Couldn't agree more. Okay, so when you go to Singapore after IBM, are you still working for them and you go remote? Like, what does that transition look like, and what are you doing?
No, so when I was in SF, I left IBM, joined a different company, a different tech company,
Okay.
and that's the tech company that I was there for about 4.5 years. Did a year, like I said, in Colombia, and then a
Right.
year and a half in Singapore. So they sent me to Singapore,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that was to specifically manage like their APAC, their Asia team.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
even in that role, like I kind of went on this evolution where basically I joined IBM because I wanted to learn about tech and business, and within IBM, kind of explored all the opportunities that they were able to give me at the time, which was covering North America, so Canada and the US, a little bit of the UK. So I got a little bit of your international travel, but like, I mean, you, there's not too much ways of doing business between the UK, Canada, and the US. It's quite similar. It's quite standard. It's
Right.
you know those cultures understand each other, right?
Yes.
And then when I went over to my other company, Unity, which is more so in the gaming software space, they gave me the opportunity to travel around the world. So I was going to, Latin America, I was going to Europe, I was going to Asia, and getting to meet all these different kinds of customers that, had all very unique requirements that don't exactly translate to the American way of doing business. So I really enjoyed that part. And then Unity said, well, hey, let's move you down to South America, Colombia. And I was like, all right, great. I'll relearn Spanish because I only had a high school level of Spanish, which is, as you
Sure.
know, pretty much nothing. Um, and moved to a small town there and absolutely loved my year there. It was fantastic. Um,
Yeah,
and
talk to
then,
me a little bit about Colombia and like what the sort of culture was like. Because I've been to Mexico and a handful of spots in Mexico. I spent 11 days in Costa Rica, and so
nice.
I have a decent vibe. I've got some friends from Venezuela, friends from the DR. So I've got a decent vibe of the area, but like full immersion for a year in Colombia. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think it's a very underrated country.
Cool.
Um, it has both oceans, it has mountains, it has volcanoes. Like, it's aesthetically a very beautiful place in the world. The city I lived in, which was a smaller city, it's not your Cartagena, your Cali, your Bogota, or your Medellin. It was a smaller town called Pereira, and there it was the coffee region of Colombia. So all year it's about 60, 65 degrees. It's in the mountains, super lush, super green. Um, And there I actually started taking up CrossFit. So first time in my life, I'd primarily been going to the gym on my own in San Francisco. And then when I was traveling on work trips, I'd always go to like a Barry's class wherever, if a Barry's was in the city I was in. But normally I'd be going to Toronto or New York or Boston or Chicago almost on a weekly basis for work at IBM. So going to Columbia, that's where I took up CrossFit, and it's interesting learning CrossFit in a different language. That's not
Right.
your main language. A lot of words, fortunately, though they just use the English versions, but not all. And so it was fun. Really enjoyed actually learning CrossFit there, and the people in Columbia are some of the nicest people you ever meet. Super open, super warm, super friendly. And especially during a COVID time, right, where people are
Mhm.
maybe a little bit more hesitant to hang out with you, there it was like almost no issue. So it was fantastic. Definitely highly recommend people travel to Colombia. Dan actually came to visit me for a little bit as well when I was down there, and we went to
Oh,
the Amazon,
cool.
and that was a unique experience as well. But very remote, very different. But the biodiversity, the animals that you see there, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I can imagine. Is the culture like pretty family based?
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
like completely family based, and it's one of those cultures where like as a stranger you're welcome into the family, right?
Yes.
Like I would spend all of the like Colombian holidays with friends or their friends or their parents or their cousins. Like it's very family oriented, very tight knit. And once someone like basically says, "Oh yeah, this guy's cool," like everyone just immediately accepts you and welcomes you in.
I love that. That was sort of my experience in Costa Rica. Even though I was only there for 11 days, I went there for a school trip, and we were led through the country by this family, and each hostel that we stayed in was run by a different son or daughter of this family, and the matriarch and the patriarch had I think it was like 16 kids, and each one had their own hostel along this backpacking journey.
That's wild.
And eventually you got to the main house where the matriarch and the patriarch lived, with some of the kids and cousins are like the same age because there's so many of them. And it was very similar, like, oh, welcome. You're very involved in making food with them, and you spend all day together, and it's very refreshing. And so I was curious if Colombia was similar. So that sounds like a great vibe.
Yeah, I think it's probably a Latin thing.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, so it's cool. And then actually, when I came out to Singapore, I was kind of missing that part of the culture experience there. And so here, I got acquainted to a couple of folks in the Latino community, including a friend that Dan and I just had dinner with last night, who was the former ambassador from El Salvador to Singapore. So
That's so cool.
still got to be kind of involved in that community on the fringes, but still being able to interact with several folks in that space.
Right. You get to scratch that. It's just a little bit still.
A little bit.
Oh, well, that's great. I love that. So cool. So, okay, we get to Singapore, and how much sooner did you say you were there before Hop gets there?
I was here. Well, he also visited, right? So I think he
Yes.
came.
It's like in 2023, I think.
Yeah, so I moved here April 2023.
Okay.
Then I think Hopwood came to visit probably October that year or August.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And he spent a couple days here in Singapore. I think he went to Bali for a bit. He might have got to the Philippines as well. He was kind of doing
Yep.
a surf trip. Uh, and Hopwood's always been wanting to develop his own business, right? And so
Sure.
I think he came out here and liked the place, saw how big fitness was for people out in Singapore, and then we started talking while he had left and trying to figure out, like, what are some potential ideas that we can run with. And one of the things that's interesting about Singapore is a lot of things that are kind of starting to become big out here generally is kind of, a couple of years maybe behind the US. And so one of the
Okay.
big trends we were seeing was electrolytes, specifically with Element or LMNT. Um, and we're starting, we were, he'd been an active user of Element. And so we were thinking, well, it is pretty hot in Singapore. It's hot all year. It's 90+% humidity, and it's about 90 degrees all year, right? More or less.
That's legit.
And so just walking around outside, you're going to start sweating, right? It doesn't matter if you're fit or not. It doesn't matter if you're running. If you're walking downtown at 2 p.m., you're going to be drenched, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, there is a constant need of like hydration or hydration supplements. And out here, they really only have like something similar to, like, I guess, Gatorade, as kind of their sports hydration drink.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mainly sugar. It's a little bit of salt, but it's mainly sugar. But they hadn't really ventured into the specific kind of element or liquid IVs of the worlds yet. And that's generally what you see here in general. Like, you have Uber that started in the US, and out here you had something, I think, a year or two later that was called Grab. And Grab is now kind of a super app in Southeast Asia, but it started a little bit after Uber did. And you kind of see not exactly these copycats, but something that's kind of similar to what works in the Western world, in Europe or US, that it kind of starts to make its way out to Singapore with kind of its more local flavors, if you will, making it work for the population here. Um, and so that's we've been talking about things for a while, and we kind of landed on, well, what if we did something around the electrolyte space, because there weren't many offerings in this space. In fact, at the time, there had only been two companies in the region, one being in Hong Kong and one being in Singapore, that were looking at doing something similar, or that had been offering something similar, I should say, to Element. Actually, the exact same thing of what Element offers to they're offering here in Singapore. And we thought, okay, well, that's interesting, but that's not exactly innovative, right? That's just a copycat version. These are fancy salts that you can get, elsewhere, but they've now packaged it for you to consume via water, hydrate yourself. And so we said, well, what can we do that actually makes it interesting? What makes it unique? What makes it different? And that's where we kind of, after doing a lot of extensive research, then meeting with various doctors, professors, at some of the national university here in Singapore, we ran it by them, and we came across this formulation because we're looking for something that specifically would help you power through a Hyrox or power through a CrossFit competition. And I should mention that at this point, Hopwood had come out to Singapore a couple months later with the intention that we'd start a business.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is April of last year,
April 24.
2024.
Yep.
And the first thing that we did when he got out here was actually go to China. We went to the Canton Fair,
Yes.
which is the biggest trade fair, I think, in the world, where you got to go meet manufacturers. This is where brands like, at least when they got started, like Nike or Lulu would have gone to. I think the fair's gone on for like 125 years. So basically, if you have an idea, you go there. And a lot of times you also go there and find inspiration for products that you might be bringing back to your country, because a lot of the manufacturers are showcasing their innovation and what they've been able to develop. And actually, the interesting thing is the supplement companies were all pushing gummies, right? And now I think if you look in the US, like, gummies are pretty big. Creatine gummies, vitamin gummies,
Huge.
things like that. So we went there with the intention of finding suppliers that we could work with to build out this kind of customized formulation. Found probably 10 or so that we continued conversations with. and went back and forth with them on testing. And the biggest challenge with ours is we don't have just the salt elements, which is your sodium, magnesium, potassium. We also have two herbs in there, two root extracts, which are Panax ginseng as well as rhodiola rosea, and both of those are super bitter.
Right.
And so you have this kind of challenge where you have something that's super salty and then something that's super bitter. You put those together, it doesn't taste great, right? The bitterness is to the point where it tastes almost as if you bit into a pharmaceutical pill. So definitely not something you want to be drinking. And so several of our manufacturers came back to us and said, look, we can't make this taste good, especially since you guys don't want to use artificial sweeteners. We don't, because we don't believe that that's a good thing to have in your body. And there's enough of that you're getting in your day-to-day caloric intake that you don't need to
Totally.
have any more in there. And we also wanted to use natural fruit as the flavoring because for 50 years now, you have Gatorade that's using blueberry blast or like a lemon lime flavor, and these are all pretty artificial. And we're like, let's do something that actually tastes like the fruit itself. And I think also in Southeast Asia, there's just so much access to fresh fruits, and they have
Right.
such a variety of different fruits that we wanted to kind of dive in deeper into a flavor that maybe is more local to this region.
Yeah, I feel
And
like given the climate of the local region, like might as well pay a little homage.
yeah, exactly. And you want something that's going to resonate with the people, right? Versus like if I were to bring in something that is super American and just does it for the people here, doesn't taste good, or it's not something that they appreciate, then it's I think a tough sell. So that's kind of where we came back in April and started working for several months with the manufacturers to come up with versions that we liked. Uh, None of those manufacturers were able to get us something that we thought was good, that we thought was sellable. So it's kind of this constant iteration process where you meet with manufacturers, you go through this dance for several months, you pay for sampling, they send you samples, you give them feedback on the samples, you go, and sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board. You have to wonder, okay, maybe the flavoring doesn't work. So we tried lychee as our flavor, for example,
Okay.
and that wasn't a great flavor for them to work with because lychee's a lighter flavor, and so when you throw in something that's bitter and something that's super salty, it's hard to mask that. We needed a stronger flavor, and so we had to go back and figure out, okay, what's a different flavor we could do. Um, so yeah, anyways, I'll pause there because I've been ranting for a bit.
No, no, no. That was great. I mean, this is exactly what I wanted because it's so
Okay.
cool to have heard Hop's perspective and then your perspective, especially coming out of having you done some CrossFit in Colombia and gotten the experience that you have, uh, and also hearing your version of the Canton Fair. No, that's all good, man. Something that I'm a little curious about is so, and this might be relevant for folks who are looking to partner with someone in a business, whatever the endeavor is. What was it like, sort of feeling each other out initially, and like how did you gauge buy-in? Because I mean, Singapore is neither of your guys' hometown. You're on the other side of the world from a lot of your friends, and even though you guys are friends, you know, there's a little bit more skin in the game now. So how did you gauge that and manage that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think given that both he and I have entrepreneurial ambitions, and we had worked together to a certain extent, but more so had traveled to different places around the world. Um, had he'd visited me, like I said, a couple of times in different countries that I was living in. Uh, we kind of knew that things would work. It was just a matter of when, right? And it was a matter of nailing down the right idea. So, kind of, what I bring to the table is maybe my personal connections in Singapore because I'd spent a good amount of time at one of the more premier CrossFit gyms, and so knew a lot of different trainers and people in the business. and he brings a lot more on like the tech side and getting our website set up and getting shipping and logistics ready, and so I think you combine both of those, and then we both align on kind of the product development and the cycle behind that, meeting with the various different experts. So we had, I think, the core components of what we need to bring to the table, and then the other parts, either it's something that he or I learned on the fly, or something that we knew people that might be able to help us with that. And so the nice thing about Singapore, given that it's a small island and only 6 million people, it's very easy to travel around, but it's also rather, in my opinion, easy to network, because once you
Cool.
know someone, they always know someone else that could maybe help you in your endeavor. And so a lot of people, as we were meeting with them and explaining what we're doing and what we're looking to do, we'd always get introductions to other folks that maybe could help, give us advice on working with manufacturers in different countries, with working on setting up a business entity in Singapore, with some of them had created consumer packaged goods products in the past, and so they were giving us advice on terms of the pitfalls or the challenges that they've had in doing so. So a lot of those gaps that we didn't naturally have expertise in, or be able to cover, we were able to find folks, I think, in all areas that could help us along the way. So that part wasn't too hard. I think the bigger thing, right, is that Dan actually moved here for the company, which
Huge
I'd say was,
signal that he's super committed.
yeah, I think that that's like the highest level of commitment you can really get. Versus, like, for me, I was already living here, right? So like
Right.
it didn't change like my full on lifestyle or my
True.
social circle or anything like that. But
True.
yeah, he moved out here.
Very nice. One of the things I'm curious about, you know, I've gathered, you played sports growing up, started the CrossFit in Columbia. I know Dan a little bit more in depth in terms of, his running background and him just being really interested in optimizing life in general with health and wellness, falling into that, of course. What was the learning curve like with regards to developing a supplement that, one, hasn't existed yet, and two, is useful in the sort of space that you guys have carved out of yourself, which is the both performance and longevity?
Yeah, I think it was kind of fascinating because Dan and I both consider ourselves guinea pigs when it comes to
I love it.
supplements. And
That's so
so
true.
he's always taking probably a wide variety of
Bro, he's
different
a
things.
pharmacy.
Exactly, exactly. Um, and I don't go to that level, but I always am taking certain things, right? Like creatine, for example, has just been something that for me I've taken for quite some time now. I even have my parents take it, right? Because
Oh, I love it.
you have the it's the most studied supplement for the past 50, 60 years. The the benefits for muscle maintenance, muscle development, especially as you get older, I think it's important to preserve as much muscle as you can, and that is one way
Yep,
that you can do so.
for sure.
But along that line, brain health is also super important, cognitive function as well. So I've had my parents take it for quite some time, partly because of both of those elements, especially as they start to get older and older. Um, so for me, I was taking creatine plus like a protein powder plus like my electrolytes on pretty much a daily basis, and then I was like, okay, electrolytes plus creatine gets kind of expensive. It's not super cheap to do it that way. Is there a better way to do it? And Dan was doing the same thing, right? And so we aligned on, okay, well, at the very least, electrolytes plus creatine is probably something that people would pay for, because if he and I are doing that, likely other people are doing that as well, given the importance of creatine. And you start to see creatine, I think in the past year, just really skyrocket
I agree.
as the consumer base is starting to get more educated on the benefits of it.
Yes.
Um, and then outside of that, I do like a lot of like sauna or cold plunges, or
Right.
I see a sports massage pretty regularly just because my body goes through a lot.
Yep.
Um, and so, we were looking at like ways to optimize like my routine or his routine, because if we're consumers of something, maybe chances are someone else would also be a consumer of that. But then again, we wanted to take it a step further, and so we were looking at what other elements could we add in, and that's where we landed on the taurine, the Pontic ginseng, the rhodiola rosea, outside of the creatine and electrolyte mix that we had put as kind of our foundation. But in general, in terms of like getting started, it's not too difficult. I'll say the challenging parts that we had to kind of face was, one, setting up a company in Singapore being not Singaporean, right?
Sure.
But the nice thing about having a company in Singapore is it's pretty favorable. It's a pretty favorable place to do business in terms of there's low taxes, but also Singapore is kind of like the Switzerland of Asia in the sense that they have, you know, good relations with anyone and everyone. So, for example, if we wanted to enter into the China market, there's no particular issue with doing so. If we want to enter
Awesome.
the U.S. market, also no particular issue with doing so. Like Singapore's done a very, very good job in being friendly with all of the countries that pretty much all the countries in the world. And so that was one factor. The other factor was, is Singapore a big enough market for us, right? And
Mm.
can we gain traction here? And I look at Singapore as more like a test bed, right? Like the U.S. market for
Yep.
sure is by far the biggest supplement market in the world. That's where even a lot of consumer facing brands in Singapore try to break into the U.S.
Sure.
Um, and given that Hopwood and I are both from the U.S., it's not terribly difficult for us to at some point make make an entry into that market. But given that Singapore is smaller, that they have a population that is rather invested in their health, that they have the funds to also make that type of investment, that it's always hot year round, that it's easier to travel around to, countrywide. We can go visit studios or go do kind of activations with different brands without any issue at all. Um, it was easier for us to kind of see, okay, does this product work in this market, and then can we replicate it in the US, versus if we wanted to go to the US first, which market are we going to? Is it San Francisco? Is it LA? Is it New York? Is it Chicago? And then from there, even within all of those markets, things are super spread out,
Yep.
and less kind of. I think it's Singapore. Things are more cohesive because you have a lot of gyms that are doing like independent gyms, but they'll come together for certain events. And with
Gotcha.
that, we are also starting to see the rise of Hyrox, which started in Singapore, like came to Singapore in 2023, and now has been coming here for 3 years since. And you're starting to see that trend start to continue in the U.S. as well. But I think Hyrox has grown faster outside of the U.S. so far,
Yes,
um,
that is my perception as well.
because it started in Europe as well, and people were craving kind of something that wasn't Tough Mudder or Spartan, maybe something that's more standardized, something indoors, something that could be replicated quite easily around the world, something that all gyms have, a good amount of equipment already for. And so we kind of saw that trend as well. And so given that, the U.S. isn't fully on board with Hyrox yet, it's getting there. It's
Yeah,
been in
it'll get there.
Chicago, it's been in Vegas, I think New York. Um, but
It's
it's
really
in
catching on with folks who are like deep in the fitness, like Orange Theory coaches and that sort of thing.
yeah,
Like those
yeah.
folks are really starting to flock to it. I think it's only just a matter of time before it goes super.
Absolutely. I think next year is the year of Hyrox in the U.S.
I think so.
And that was evident with them choosing, obviously, strategically to have their championships in Chicago, right?
Right.
Um, so, anyways, we see kind of these trends, right? Which is people are looking for something or started to be more involved in an activity that requires a lot of endurance, strength, as well as it's held in a rather hot environment, and the people that are participating in it generally have a certain level of wealth to be able to do so, because it's not exactly a poor man's sport.
Sure.
Registration for Hyrox is rather expensive. The registration at a CrossFit gym is not cheap either. Um, so we looked at that and said, okay, Singapore is a great place to kick things off. Um, the other challenges that we did kind of face were, well, in Singapore they have HSA, which is the Health Sciences Authority, which is more so the FDA equivalent. Here in Singapore, they focus on supplements, and just like the FDA, um, they don't really care too much about what you put into your supplement, as long as people are not getting sick or dying, right?
Sure.
At that point, then the FDA gets involved, or HSA gets involved, and they're not happy. But on the other hand, SFA, gosh, is responsible for the food and food safety. And so we had kind of this challenge, which is which of you guys are regulating us? Because we go to HSA, and they would say, we aren't sure. You sound like you're a supplement. You have most of the things like that supplements have, but we're not 100% sure if you'd fall under us. In which case, for us to sell, it's a lot easier. Or if you fall under the Food Administration, in which case it's more challenging,
Yeah.
because you need a license, you need them to explicitly say, yes, you need to follow this standard of labeling,
Hmm.
um, that is very different from the way supplements might be labeled. And then also from a marketing standpoint, there's differences in what we could say and what we can't say. So that took like 9 months, for those two regulatory agencies to come back to us and say, okay, yes, you fall under this. And in our case, we fall under the food category. And so then we had to change, how do we package? How do we showcase, what's in the product, and what levels? How do we get our license to import our product? We had to go through several more steps than you would if you have to go through the nutrition side.
Dang, I don't think I realized that they classified your supplement as a food.
Yeah, and the reason being is because we have the herbs in it, and in
Yeah, sure.
Singapore, I think if you have things like those root extracts, like those, that is sometimes found in maybe diet,
Yeah, yeah,
not necessarily like a supplement, but maybe the food itself, or like a tea or something like that.
right.
And so that's why I believe it falls under that. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Very nice. Yeah, I didn't. That's all new information. I'm glad you brought that up. So, shifting gears a bit, you when did you guys get your shipment? How long ago was did the first shipment come in?
It was about maybe 5 weeks ago now.
Okay, cool. So before we talk about how that has gone and maybe some of the events you guys have done and all that, what was it like to actually get it and then have it taste like the sample? Like, was there relief, or talk to me about that?
uh, so a couple of things, right? Like, working with manufacturers is very, very challenging. It is a emotional roller coaster. Um, I will say they are rather responsive until the point where you give them money, and then all deadlines that were promised or discussed kind of fly out the window, and it's just kind of, you're hoping that it's going to arrive, and you're not sure.
Ugh.
So we had placed our order, and then we'd been given various timelines. Even to place the order took a while, because it goes through um, a lot of legal review on the manufacturing side, in terms of they don't want to be responsible for um, what you might be inaccurately saying on your marketing, or your on the sachet or the
Right.
box design.
That makes
And
sense.
that took a very long time. Um, and then actually getting the right design that the manufacturer can work with, that they could print onto the box as well as the sachet takes a while as well.
Okay, got
Um, so that takes several weeks to get through. Then you kick off manufacturing, and the manufacturer kind of gives you updates, but not really. They're vague updates. They're kind of like, yeah, it probably will arrive by around this time, but we're not going to say it will or won't.
Oh, thanks for that.
Yeah, so they're kind of non-updates, if you will. But all of a sudden I get a call from the airport, and they said, "Hey, we have some packages for you," and I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting it this day because we were thinking it was coming a couple days later." And our manufacturer, of course, didn't tell us, "Hey, we've shipped it out and it's on this flight," um, and we needed our product to get here by a certain time because we had a couple of different events that we wanted to
Sure.
be involved in, and then Hyrox in Singapore was at the end of June, and we wanted to be able to showcase the product beforehand, and obviously let people train with that product, especially since some of them were adamantly waiting for our product to arrive so that they could incorporate it into their training regimen. And so you kind of have like these iffy responses from the manufacturer, and then you kind of have to give updates to your prospect customers that are waiting around for it, right? But you don't have a solid update. It's kind
Right.
of we think it's going to arrive here, and we hope it does, right? But obviously, we don't want that to get in the way of anyone's training, or especially if they were relying on it to arrive.
Sure. Makes a
So
pre-order a little bit challenging too.
it made the pre-order very challenging. In fact, internally, we delayed it multiple times, which ended up working out. It was fine, but it wasn't like the most ideal scenario.
Sure.
Um, and I had been training for Hyrox in Bangkok, which was at the end of May, and we happened to get our product just before that Hyrox, so I was able to take it with me to Bangkok, take it, and my Hyrox partner as well, and then we went out and did a race. And for him, it was the first time that he didn't cramp on during a Hyrox race, which was good because he'd been taking a bunch of different electrolyte supplements in the past, and every single time he was cramping, whether it was the brand in Hong Kong or some of the brands here in Singapore, they just didn't work for him. So that was a good reassuring sign that
Yeah,
maybe we're
good test case right there.
yeah. But when we first opened the box, I mean, first of all, we're getting several pallets sent over to my apartment in Singapore, and all of a sudden we get a knock on the door, and these guys are wheeling up boxes, and they're just dropping it off in my living room, and we're getting like 30 big boxes of rather heavy product, right? And we open it up and we're like, oh, this box kind of looks like what we designed. Okay, that's a good sign. And then we open up the box and we're like, okay, the sachet, looks pretty similar to what we had, designed with our designer. And then we pour it out, we try it, and boom, we're ready to roll because it tasted exactly like what we had hoped it was going to taste like, which is what we had sampled and kind of developed with the manufacturer to get to that point. But you never know, right? Because we'd heard a lot of horror stories where the sampling process, great, smooth, tastes great, and then once the manufacturer has your money, they're making you something that just, they're cutting corners and they're making something that tastes nothing like what you had expected. And,
Right.
and you can't really fight that, right? Because taste is all relative, and it's kind of a he said she said scenario, and I don't have like proof that, oh, this is what the sample tastes like and this is what you guys gave me. Like there's nothing I could go back to, and we'd already paid all that money too. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, to get back to your original point, was it relieving? Yes, absolutely. It was fantastic to have that in our apartment, in our hands, and actually be able to try something that did taste good, which is the biggest thing,
Yep.
and did have the contents of what we had set out to order and design.
That's excellent. Well, but before we move on, congrats, man. I'm sure that was just such a cool moment to have put all the money, all the time, all the effort, and obviously, goal is make some sales and make some more, and release some more products and all that. But at least initially, like, hell yeah, we developed a formula, we talked to manufacturers, we got it done, and now we have it, and now we can sell it. Like,
Yeah.
that in and of itself is a huge accomplishment. So kudos, that's
Yeah.
excellent. Well
Yeah.
done. Um, so you had mentioned you got to take it at the Hyrox you were at. Did you have a table at that event? Let's talk about some of these events that you're able to go to after. So what, because
Yeah.
Hopwood and I, like I said, it had happened that week when we talked. So I have no clue what you've been up to since. So let's go ahead and hop into that.
Yeah. I mean, most Hyroxes you can't necessarily have a table,
Okay.
if you will, at unless you're one of like their premier sponsors. So you're probably
Gotcha. Like
paying
an
somewhere
approved
from
vendor
like
of some sort.
50 to 100K to get
Oh,
that
jeez.
sponsorship. And you're talking about very big companies that are doing that, not guys like us, not
Right.
anytime soon at least. Um, so first week we already had a bunch of pre-orders, and we had got the product on a Tuesday, but our pre-order arrival date that we told everyone was the following Monday. So we got it a couple days early, which was awesome. Which meant that we got to do a couple of different things. We got to deliver the product to everyone, or almost everyone, who had placed an order, and got to get our pre-order discount as well. We hand delivered all of them, right? So we brought them personally to every single person that placed an order. Now,
Awesome.
most of those people were within my network, and that started to change over time, which is good. But most of the pre-orders were people that I knew, and they just maybe believed in what we'd been doing, believed in the work that we pulled together, and had seen kind of the journey and the evolution of the business for the past couple of months, and they wanted to buy in, so they did, which is awesome, and we're super happy and thankful for their support. I think all of them have given us, very good feedback in terms of they love the flavoring, they love the amount of sweetness, as well as how easy it is to drink, and how good it tastes. So that was good, right? And then so we delivered all of those orders out in the next couple of days, and then with one of my gyms that I go to, which is right next to my apartment, we did kind of a Hyrox simulation with them where we brought over our product. We kind of set up a water station, or like a refilling station, if you will,
Cool.
while the people are working out. They can grab little cups of our product, and kind of like if you were running like a half marathon, you would see kind of something similar, or a
Yep.
Hyrox. You see the same thing as well. And so we were able to do several different kind of Hyrox simulations. Generally, those happen on weekends, so Saturdays, Sundays. So we did several of that for the past couple of weeks. Uh, we also got invited to a CrossFit gym. Probably it's an offshoot of the previous CrossFit gym that I had been going to in the past, um, and they set up. Some folks left and set up a new gym. And so they had their grand opening. They invited us to come down, and we were able to talk about the product. Same
Sick.
thing. We were, you know, having people sample the product, as well as we were selling it on site. So we've done a couple of those, and we find that that generally works very, very well, especially when people try the product. Sometimes they're a little skeptical. Okay, is it going to taste good? It has all these things in it. Am I going to like it? But generally speaking, when they try it, I've had no one say it doesn't taste good, right? In fact,
Nice.
most people say it tastes super refreshing. So we were able to kind of do that for the past couple of weekends. Um, we also brought on a couple of folks that I know are, if you will, super athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They're either trainers, or they're just objectively very, very fit people. And we've brought them on as ambassadors, and they've been taking the product, as well as handing it out to people within their network. And so we've
Sweet.
started to see more people kind of be driven our way, and start to order because of that as well. And then this past weekend in Singapore, we had 2 days of Hyrox, Saturday and Sunday. I did a solo race on Saturday, and then I did a doubles race on Sunday.
Damn,
Um,
bro. Quick turnaround.
yeah, 24 hours later. Took the product each time, didn't have issues with cramps. And Singapore is a brutal race because it's at the indoors. Well, it's National Stadium, which is kind of indoors but not fully enclosed. So you still get a lot of that humidity in there. Left and right, people are on the ground, collapsing, cramping, being wheelchaired out. Like it's an interesting scenario. A lot of people are walking because they have probably cramped up, can't continue running. Um, and so we were invited by several different brands like F45, as well as LSKD, to kind of host an event outside of the stadium, because, like I mentioned, most events you aren't able to get most Hyrox events you're not able to get a booth unless you're a premium sponsor, aka you have the money to do so.
Right.
And so we kind of threw this, like, we called it After Rocks, which is kind of after High Rocks, like a party where we had the DJ, we had a bunch
Oh,
of different
sweet.
samples ranging from a protein powder company, a cold plunge company, a couple different apparel companies, a coconut water company, a protein chocolate company, and then there was us. And so we had the booth for 2 days, and we got a good amount of people coming by to try out our product, which is great, and several of them buying it too. So that's kind of what we've been up to for the past couple of weeks. Um, and the next couple of weeks, we plan to show up at different BFTs, F45s. We've been talking to several other independent gyms as well about doing various events and collaborations. And that's kind of the space we want to be, I think, in, because a lot of this space is very much so community driven. Whether it's you're training for a Hyrox, generally you're doing that in a group, whether that's
Yeah.
like your track sessions, your longer runs. So a lot of run clubs, I think, have exploded in popularity because of Hyrox. Because now you have
Yes.
people that traditionally would be lifting only, and now they're all of a sudden interested or have to be interested in running. And vice versa, you have people that maybe were just going to run clubs, and now they have to start lifting weight and being able to push weight. And so they're getting more involved in the gym space. And so we find ourselves kind of caught in that middle space, which we see no one really servicing. And that's part of the reason why we started this company. Was we found a lot of brands are focused on the marathoners or the half marathoners, and a lot of brands are focused on like the bodybuilders or the gym goers. But I find most people are probably in that middle ground where they're running a couple times a week and they're lifting weights. And I think that that's the more interesting and probably the more healthy way to work out, from what research also shows, which is you can't do one thing only. You have to do kind of a combination of both. And if that's the case, in terms of that's lifestyle and that's the habits that people are carrying out, then why not build supplements around that? And so we started off with obviously the hydration supplement, which helps you with your recovery as well as your performance for someone that is lifting weights and also running or engaging in cardio intensive activity. But where we are going is we'll have a couple of different flavors that we are testing out right now: yuzu, mango, pineapple, passion fruit. And so we
Beautiful.
hope in the next couple of months we'll have another flavor outside of the blackcurrant that we've already developed, and that's a hydration supplement. But we also are in the process of testing out a gel, because most
Okay.
sports gels are built for people that are running marathons, half marathons, ultras, etc. And primarily they just have carbs, right? Just
Yes.
quick, fast acting carbs, also slow acting carbs, right? And
Hmm.
that helps carry you through the race. A little bit of electrolytes. But a lot of people will take a gel for like a Hyrox or a CrossFit competition. And again, it's not a supplement that's built for that purpose. And so
Right.
we're looking at something that's built for purpose, that will help you, maybe reduce your lactate acid buildup that comes because you're pushing a heavy sled and then you have to go into a run in a
Right.
Hyrox. Or in a CrossFit competition, you might have to hit the assault bike super hard and then all of a sudden you're doing thrusters, right?
Right.
And
That
so we're looking at
deadlifts
something
and
that,
some rope climbs.
yeah, exactly. So we're looking at something that like is more purpose built, and research backed.
Love it.
And so with our sport gel, we look at something that helps you with like your power output, as well as your muscle recovery, because again, general sports gels aren't doing that today.
Hmm.
And then it will also have, your standard carbs and maybe some electrolytes.
Sure.
But we're looking at like what can we do there? We're looking at sleep supplements as well, because most sleep supplements are built for people that for the general population,
Yep.
and people like you and I don't fall in the general population because we exercise 5 times a week,
Yeah,
and
vigorously.
that's abnormal and that's not common. And so we're looking at something that maybe helps reduce your stress levels, right? Because you also have your day job and then you're working out, so you're increasing your cortisol, and so like how do you calm it back down? So things like ashwagandha, for example,
Yep.
things like magnesium, right?
L-theanine.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so we're looking at like what would a hybrid athlete ideally take? Okay, what would I be taking? But I would have to pull together a bunch of different elements. How can I
Yep.
put that into one? And so that's kind of the next evolution of where that's going. And the last comment I'll make on, in terms of like what we look to develop and how do we purposefully do so, we find that a lot of, or at least I find a lot of supplements on the market will put in like, hey, we're using a pinch of Himalayan pink salt, or we're AG1 and we have 80 different ingredients in a little 5 gram scoop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not going to replace anything. You don't even know the amounts that they've put into that. And so a lot of it for me is just marketing fluff. And so for us, we're very intentional that everything that we put in is scientifically backed. And not only that, the amounts that we put in are also at the clinically dosed level, meaning that
Right.
I'm not going to put in 100 grams of creatine because you and I know 100 grams of creatine does nothing. What
Right.
I am
Right.
going to put in, and what we did put in, right, is 5 grams of creatine. Because research says you need to take at least 5 grams of creatine to get the benefits of creatine. And so we won't put in a product just to say that we have it in there. We're putting in a
Right.
product at the minimum, at the very least, the minimum levels that have been scientifically proven to give you a benefit as a user. And that makes it harder. That makes things take longer. It makes it not taste as good, or the flavoring to make it taste good significantly harder. That makes our cost much higher,
Yep.
because we're still pricing it at what everyone else will be pricing a standard electrolyte supplement at, but we have 5 times the ingredients that are going to bring you 5 times the benefits, um, and so it's harder doing it that way, but it's harder doing things the right way, and we want to do so. We'll continue to do so.
I love it. Yeah, it is hard doing the things the right way, and I think you mentioned a couple things in there that I'll try and touch on that I think are at least at the very least resonate with me. I mean, I'm sort of target audience right here. You're talking to, but you had talked about how when people work out, generally they are doing a little bit of lifting. They are doing a little bit of running, maybe not running, cardio, rowing, whatever. People generally, when they work out, they're like, okay, I need to do some running or cardio. I need to do some weight training. And I think that is a hugely untapped market. And even more so, like you have tailor made something that not only is cost effective as a consumer, but also like, so one of the fun things about taking supplements is sort of picking and choosing the ones that are most relevant, and then you're tapped out of your budget and you're like, okay, I'll just deal with these. Where it's like, okay, well, if I want to get the minimum effective dose creatine and my electrolytes and some adaptogens in there, like you said, for the price of just more or less your classic electrolyte drink, you can get all of that. And then because you're not breaking the bank, you still have a little bit of budget, if you want to get your lion's mane or whatever sort of protein powder, that sort of thing. So I think that's what's really cool about it is just, from a consumer standpoint, a little bit more cost effective. And that the dose is going to count where you need it to count. And, like when I started buying supplements in 2014, I would go to the local GNC. I'm like 19 years old and I just want to get big and strong because I'm 19 years old. I go up to the salesperson, not really knowing that they're really more of a salesperson than an expert. And, they walk you through the store. It's like, okay, you're going to want to take these multivitamins every morning. here's your pre-workout, here's your protein powder, that's $200. And they're like, oh, $200. Okay, if that's what it takes to be big and strong.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
don't even know the pills I'm taking in the morning. I mean, there was some sort of multivitamin and a handful of other things. And, I think supplements have come a long way. But, for folks who do a little bit of everything, which is most people who work out, and then for folks who do a little bit of everything at a super vigorous level, similar to yourself and me, this is so cool. When you took it, you said you didn't experience any sort of cramping, that sort of thing. Um, how was stress level, just with regards to your rhodiola rosea and your Panax ginseng in there? Did you feel like you were in control and composed?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a very smooth race, I think.
Nice.
Which when you do go to a Hyrox, you'll see it can be quite chaotic. People
Hmm.
are everywhere. Uh, you see a good amount of collisions, unfortunately. Just fast people hitting maybe slower people on accident.
Sure.
Um, and so the adaptogens help a lot with just staying calm, not letting your heart rate spike too much,
Yep.
being a little bit more composed. Um, and for me, what I notice is in High Rocks, it's hard to go from station where you've hit or pushed weight into the run.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
and it's hard to kind of get your mindset to come back to earth and say, all right, I just like hit or push the sled super hard for a couple of minutes and I'm exhausted, but now I have to like convince myself to get back into at the very least a slow jog and then hopefully at a fast jog and then hopefully a fast run.
Yes.
Um, because with Hyrox, it's kind of you're always operating at a minimum at 80%, but
Right.
probably in an ideal world, you're at 90-95% of what you're able to do.
Sure.
And it's hard to sustain that for an hour and a half, right?
Yep.
But what I notice is I'm more composed and able to get back into the swing of, okay, I need to get back to my race pace as soon as possible. Versus like if I didn't take it, maybe it would take me a little bit longer to build up kind of that mental capacity to say, all right, I just got completely winded by doing all these lunges, and now I have to get into a run as quickly as possible. It might take me a little bit longer to do that. And in doing so, like time is super valuable in High Rocks because it's not like the clock ever stops. And so
Yes.
you'll see like a
Correct.
lot of people that will be walking out of the station when they probably should be at the very least jogging.
Uh-huh.
And so, I think it helps you kind of get back into that mindset and ready for the next run and then for the next station.
Yeah, sort of just embracing the suffering that is to come. It's like, okay, switch gears, right in the next thing. We're just going to do it
Yeah.
and hop right in. What has it been like now that you've been doing more events and that sort of thing, sort of switching gears and being more public facing and sort of having to get out in front of the product and promote it? Is that something you've had to do previously? Is that new? What has that been like?
Yeah, I think this is another way that maybe Dan and I are able to split duties pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that I would say in my time in Singapore, I've been able to interact with a lot of the different fitness communities and continue to do so on a pretty regular basis. And so I think every week I am actively involved in like 3 or 4 different groups,
Mm.
whether that's like my gym that I go to every single day, which is kind of like a high intensity class setting,
Okay.
or the run club that I go to, which is run by another kind of hit CrossFit type gym. Um, so, given that Hopwood or Dan has been injured for
Right.
about 2 years now, he hasn't been able to kind of be the face of the product in that sense. Where else
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to be more of that performance type
Sure.
person that's like living and doing it. Um, Not to say that he isn't or can't do that, but it's just he hasn't physically been able to get fully involved yet.
Yeah, I know he's chomping at the bit to get back in there.
Yeah, yeah, and we'd been hoping that actually my second Hyrox this past weekend was originally scheduled to be with him, so we were hoping he was going to be fit enough or recovered enough, I should say, to partake in that one. Maybe November will be the next one that he and I maybe can look at doing.
Sweet.
So, anyways, I get to be more so like the face of it from a performance standpoint in terms of
Yep.
I'm not just saying I do these things. I'm actually living them out. Like I am actually doing all of these different run groups or doing these type of workouts. So in that sense, I get to be that kind of face. And then on the other side, Hop or Dan gets to be kind of the face behind like the interviews that he's been doing, as
Yep.
well as he's normally manning our booth more than I because I mean, in this past weekend, for example, I did 2 Hyroxes and I need, mental time to also decompress after that.
Of course.
So he's at the booth all day and kind of being the face there. So, it kind of works out pretty well, at least at this stage where not having to do anything too different, which I think is nice as well for me because I get to be rather authentic in terms of who I am and what I'm doing. And this has just been my lifestyle for years now, which is a couple of different runs a week, a couple of different workouts, lifting weights a week. So I don't have to change anything, which is good, I think. Um,
Huge.
and people know that, right? Like the people that we've been, giving product to and selling product to, a lot of them know that this is just who I've been for years. So it's not like something that's like all of a sudden he's just doing this just to showcase this product, just to be kind of more so on the marketing side of things. But it's just something that I've always done. So that's kind of good. And I think that also helps people realize like what it takes to actually perform at a higher level is you also have to take care of like your sleep and your nutrition. Um, so that's not too difficult, I'd say, just because it's rather authentic to who I've been for several years, and I just don't have to go out of my way to be someone who I'm not. So yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, well, I mean, that's another cool thing about the product is you've made something that you stand to directly benefit from. And so, you know what I mean? And so it makes marketing a lot easier when you're like, yeah, I actually really need this product
yeah,
and I know you do too. And I'm going to go do the shit that this product will help me complete. And so I feel like it's you found a need or I guess a problem that you wanted to solve and you effectively solved it. And you also get to benefit from that problem being solved.
yeah, and that's not to say like I perform better or than other people. I'm very average when it comes to like athletic endeavors, and I'll be the first person to say that. But I think to be able to perform consistently and as frequently as I do,
Yes.
your what you take is super important, and also how it helps you recover is also super important. And then
Yes.
the other point I'll just mention, just because you brought this up, is Dan and I wouldn't push anything we wouldn't be taking ourselves. It's just, I am my own consumer, right,
Yes.
of my product, and I'll continue to be so. It's not like we're not in this to just make dollars. We're in this to actually help ourselves benefit from what we're able to create, and we realized no one else was doing it, and that's why we decided to do it ourselves.
That's excellent. Yeah. I mean, that's the people that should be solving the problems are the ones that stand to benefit from it. And so I'm glad that it's you guys. And from what I've gathered so far in this conversation, and definitely from what I know about Hopwood, I can say that what you're saying is definitely true. um, so you had hinted at some of the future of hybrid health. You had mentioned a potential supplement where you're thinking about, you talked about the sleep one, you talked about gel. You had mentioned one also where you were thinking about maybe something that helps increase power output or something like that. I'm a little curious. What sort of supplements are you thinking about combining for this sort of power output? That caught my eye in terms of, ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think, and that by the way was more so in the context of the gel. So like what we have
Oh, okay,
today,
gotcha. Well, then talk about the gel then.
yeah. So what we have today, right, is something that's a hydration supplement, but you could consider it kind of a pre, intra, or a post workout. So it depends on when you want to take it and what suits kind of your schedule, right? I think
Mhm.
like for anything, whether it's like fitness or work or diet, like the best one's always going to be the one that works for you.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
for
Well said.
me, like I take the hydration supplement before and during my workout. I like something to sip on while I'm exercising. Other people like to take, so Dan likes to take it beforehand, so he'll chug one in the morning, and however it works best for him. I know some of our other athletes that are taking it like to take it at night, and they take it at night because they wake up and they feel fresher, right? So
Yeah.
your body's been able to help process it while you're sleeping and help with muscle repair and help maybe get you into deeper sleep and
Yeah. I mean, you can
so
capitalize on the growth hormone that dumps when you're
exactly.
sleeping with the creatine. Yeah, that's a good
Precisely,
idea.
precisely. So, but for me, like as someone that historically has sleeping issues, I don't like taking it at night because I don't want another reason for me to potentially have to wake up and
Yeah, I
use
don't
the
want to be peeing
bathroom.
the whole night.
Yeah. So it kind of depends on like when you want to take it and what works best in your schedule. So I take mine in the morning because generally I work out in the morning. Um, but when we dive into like the sports gel and what we're talking about when it comes to like power output, what can help you with power output, as well as reducing like lactate acid buildup. A couple of things come to mind. Of course, you have your creatine, which is helping increasing, like the availability of ATP, which is more
Yep.
so your main source of energy for your muscle contractions.
Yep.
So obviously, you have an increase in power output and strength, and more research says that maybe 5 grams isn't enough, that maybe you should be taking 10 or 15. And that's more so to benefit on the brain function side of things.
I'm at 10 grams right now. I have to wake up on average Monday through Friday between like 4:45 and 5:15, and try to go to bed typically between 9:30. But just between kid workout, all just life. I need those 10 grams, and I swear to you, I can feel the difference on
Yeah.
5 versus 10. I take 5 in the morning and then 5 like mid afternoon, evening. Game changer.
Yeah. And part of like, there's two things that we did with hybrid hydration that we wanted to be pretty intentional about. One was we didn't want to add caffeine. So we don't have caffeine in ours. And the reason being is we didn't want people to have to choose between their cup of coffee in the morning
Mm-hmm.
or our product. The
Right.
second part is I am one of the few people that actually doesn't drink caffeine at all.
Good for you.
Um, yeah, it's more so like I can't. Like if I were to drink caffeine, like the smallest amount of caffeine, which is ironic because I did live in the coffee region of Colombia,
Right.
and if I were to have a sip of coffee, I can count on one hand, by the way, how many times I've had coffee in my life. It's about 3 or 4, and I'm talking
Wow.
about sips, right? Um, I will stay up all night. There's no question about it. Yeah,
Jittery.
I hate it, hate it. So I don't drink caffeine, so that's another reason. So again, going back to I am a user of my own product. And then the last reason was, well, some people like to work out at night, right? And so if I'm like doing a night run at 10 p.m. and then I'm planning on showering and go to bed right after, last thing I want is probably a caffeine spike at that time.
Sure.
Especially if you talk about like getting your HRV up and getting your heart rate down as much as possible for you to get a good night's sleep and get into deep sleep.
Yep.
Um, that's super important. So we didn't want people to have to choose between this or that. So while I say it is kind of, it can be considered a pre-workout, it's not pre-workout in that sense, right?
Right.
We put in more components that maybe have some stimulating side effects, but nothing too intense. Nothing
Right.
that would disrupt your sleep.
Totally.
And then the other power output elements could be something like a beta alanine, caffeine, of course, a sodium bicarbonate. You also have like betaine. There's several others that we're looking at, like nitrates and coenzyme Q10. There's several different things that we are exploring. The challenge becomes, how much can you fit into a gel? And
Right.
then even if you can fit it into a gel, is it convenient or easy enough to take while you're running or while you're on the go? So that's kind of the challenges I foresee will come across. Taste, I'm not too concerned about taste. I mean, obviously we'll want to use natural sweeteners and natural flavoring, um, which does impose that it will cost us more and take maybe a little bit more time to nail out. But I'm not too concerned about that. The bigger concern is how do we get something that's going to work and work well together and work for what we're intending it to do. And
Yep.
that will involve us going back and forth with the various doctors and professors that we work with here in Singapore, as well as making sure that the research actually backs it up too.
Yeah.
And by the way, the reason why we work with doctors and professors in Singapore versus like other places, again, because we're building a product for a specific market,
Yeah.
and I don't want to build something that works for someone in Minnesota where half the year it's cold, right, and not humid.
Yep.
And so we're looking at something that is specific to this climate and the people that we're looking to serve.
I love it. Yeah, just keeping the consumer in mind. That's great. Um, One of the things I'm curious about is you've got your product right now, you've got your events, you've got ideas for the future. What is your day to day looking like? How are you juggling these different aspects of running the company?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get this question quite a bit, right? Because Dan and I both have full time jobs, right? Like this is
Right,
not our full time job yet,
right.
right? And so we obviously have other responsibilities and a totally different line of work that we both work in today. Um, so day to day, it's again, it goes back to like I don't have to necessarily do something outside of the norm.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of times we're interacting with people that
True.
we 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 already know.
The network
Uh,
exists, it's built in. You're not changing your routine.
Precisely. The
Okay,
changes
yeah.
maybe that are there is like I'm probably working out less on my weekends and more so showing up to different gyms and showcasing the product
Yeah.
than I was before. But the day to day is rather manageable at this stage. And we also have a great social media person that has taken a pretty big workload off of Dan and I because neither he nor I specialize in social media. You can probably tell first glance by looking at our Instagrams that is not our forte. It is more a chore for us than it is something that we enjoy. And so having
Dude, I hear
someone that
you.
enjoys doing that and enjoys putting together content has been a huge lift off of our shoulders, and that gives us more time to focus on the manufacturing and the co-creation of new products and the interaction with our customers versus having to spend probably hours, to be honest, to come up with something that isn't going to be anywhere as good as what we have today. So we're very fortunate enough to have someone there to help us on that front too.
Yeah, that's a total game changer. Um, what when you talk with your social media person, are there any sort of guidelines, or are you sort of letting them run with it? Like how does that communication work?
I think a little bit of both. Like I think there's sometimes we have vision and then there's execution. And then there's just because I'm not someone that's on social media all the time and that's not my expertise. Um, there are ideas that she'll bring us that we're like, yeah, let's run with that.
Sweet.
Um, I'll say probably most of our social media engagement has been driven by her, and maybe 10 or 20% is input from Dan or I saying, hey, we'd like to do this. How do we get it done? But most of it, I'd say, is probably coming from her, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we needed, and she's been able to fill some pretty big shoes in a key gap that Dan and I just don't have a good skill set or knowledge around.
Yeah. When you think about the future, you had mentioned not your full time job yet. Obviously, if you when you get to the point when you can make it your full time job, you're probably going to start looking at staffing. Have you guys started giving that sort of stuff any sort of thought, like what you're going to need, the moving pieces as far as that goes?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there to unpack. One would be, where does it make sense to run the company out of in terms of like physically, right? Like
Right.
obviously there's a physical element to consumer goods, and so where does it make most sense to have that? The benefit of being in Singapore is, there are surrounding countries that maybe are a little bit more affordable, a little bit more reasonable in
Yep.
terms of warehousing and storage. But then obviously you have a logistics challenge in terms of, if Singapore is still your main market, like how do you ship that product in?
Uh-huh.
Um, so there's a question around like, okay, what makes sense from the physical element? Obviously, a lot of what we do is in person, uh, showing up to different gyms, having people try out the product. So if Singapore continues to be the main market, then obviously we'll want at least Dan and I to be based here. But the other folks on the team, maybe not. Maybe they don't have to be based here. And then the other part of it is like, if we look to expand into the U.S., like who do we work with, or how do we get that going, or what market or region do we target? Do we look at having a heavier presence on things like TikTok Shop, because that's bigger in the U.S. than it probably is in Singapore? Um, and so I think a lot of those elements will be determined based on where our product fully resonates and where we're spending most of our time. Um, and I think that's still kind of open for discussion.
Yeah.
But like I said, Singapore, at least for the time being, is our primary market. US could be a secondary and maybe becomes primary in the future. But for the time being, we have one flavor, one product, hoping to roll out a couple more flavors and at least one more product before end of year, and we'll see how that resonates and how that works out in Singapore.
Yeah, I love it. You sort of just alluded to it in your answer to the last question, but you know, what if you're envisioning Ben's ultimate best case scenario fantasy with hybrid health? What do you see? Maybe 5, 10 years. Doesn't really matter what the timeline. In a perfect world, what would this company be doing, and what would it look like?
I think there's two things. One is, again, I think we will be like the leading supplement, front runner in the hybrid athletic or cross functional athletic space. And that's like that's where we want to be, right? Like we're creating almost like a niche within a new category. But again, it's not too new of a category because probably most people are doing some form of cross functional training. It's
Sure.
just only recently has it been categorized that way.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that's one thing. The second thing is, um, I want other supplement companies to be more intentional about what they create
Mm.
and more purpose driven, to not just be fully focused on how to make money or how to scheme people out of money. And one way we can do that is if we are able to push the boundaries of what is out there on the market, other companies will have to do so as well. Like you just cannot just sell standard electrolytes anymore. You have to
Right.
sell something that is above and beyond that because there's nothing unique about that.
Yes.
And so what I want is like other companies to also kind of follow suit, not just us, but we hopefully will push companies to be innovative and be purposeful in the ways that they serve their customers and intentional about that. And at the same point, they will probably push us to be above and beyond what we are today. And so, I'm not looking at it as like I want our company to be super successful and that's the end game. But I want consumers to be healthier at the end of the day and get what they need, or what they, what they're lacking in the market today. And I want other people, if it's not us, to at least be able to fill those gaps.
Dude, what a lovely answer. So basically, set the new gold standard and hope that other companies rise to it, and then the consumer just gets to benefit as the tide raises all the ships, and there's just better
Because, I
products
mean,
out there.
at the end of the day, you and I are still consumers, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
I still buy protein bars, and I still buy protein powder, and I still buy all of these things regardless of like if I'm able to create it or not. And
And all factored into a budget too.
all factored into a budget. And so I want like the access to the best of the best within reason. Um,
Yes.
and so if no one's out there creating it, then maybe we should be creating it. If we are creating it, then maybe someone should push the limits and boundaries of what we've created and take it to the next level, right?
Yep.
And ultimately, I benefit, you benefit, consumers benefit, and that's what I want to continue to happen. Unfortunately, that's not what's happened, with a lot of supplement companies, I think, and so I hope that we'll get the supplement industry as a whole will get right shipped, and we'll head in the right direction.
Very nice. One of the things I wanted to make sure we chatted about, you had talked about joining your CrossFit gym in Colombia, and now you're knocking out team Hyrox and regular Hyrox back to back. What what has your fitness journey been like the past few years, and what made you want to start competing? You had mentioned, you know, maybe athletically you're like average or right down the middle, but regardless, you're still pushing yourself. These are not things that people do typically. So what's got you doing these things, man?
A couple of things. One is I recognized several years ago that health is wealth, right? And the ability to continue to perform at a high level for as long as possible majorly factors into my overall level of happiness and satisfaction and
Yep.
contentness. And a lot of things that I like to do, whether it's like hiking or scuba diving or just general exercise, involves and requires my body to be able to perform at a certain level. And I also recognize that as you get older, it's harder to continue doing so,
Mm-hmm.
and that there will be a day where I can't. But until then, I want to extend that health span as long as possible, where I don't want to be someone that's in their 60s or 70s in a wheelchair. And one
Right.
of those ways that you can extend, maybe your health span is by being intentional and focusing on, developing and growing, both mentally and physically as much as possible, while also preventing injury. And so
Yes.
for me, that's always just been a key component. Like even with intensive work travel, where I was traveling, 3 weeks, 4 weeks every single month for a while, um, the first thing I do is always hit the gym. I get off the
Mm-hmm.
plane, I go to the gym, and there's just no excuses, regardless of like what time it was, regardless of like if I was jet lagged. I like, for me, like being physically active, and being able to continue to do so is an investment in my health as much as it is, and it's just as important as I would be making investments in like my financial like standing as well in the future. And so arguably it's more important. Like I always think about like, you can be a billionaire, but if you're bound to a wheelchair and not able to enjoy life the way you were able to when you were in your 20s and 30s, because maybe you made that sacrifice to focus fully on like financial pursuits, I just don't see the point.
Yeah, you're trapped.
Um, yeah, I can have all the money in the world, but if I can't enjoy it, then what's the point there? So for me, that's the other aspect of it, which is like, I think investment in your health is just as important as investment in your wealth. And I think that the the sooner you recognize that, the sooner that you make that investment, the better it will pay off for you in the long run. In the short run, for sure, but also in the long run. So that's part of it. I'd say in terms of like why, when did I recognize that, or why did I recognize that? And then, from a family standpoint, like there's a lot of different health conditions that my family has in terms of like high blood pressure,
Yep.
cholesterol,
Yep.
and seeing, my parents or my grandparents go through, you know, certain steps to avoid that or mitigate that as best as they can as they get, especially as they age, was kind of a sign for me as well. Like, look, the writing could be on the wall, but if you implement certain steps, it could definitely be better for you. Not to say that it can avoid it completely,
Sure.
but there are
You
definitely
can
things
push
you
it
can.
back as far as possible.
There's definitely things you can do. There's definitely things you shouldn't do, right?
Yes.
And so for me, that's crystal clear. Again, going along the same lines of like, do I like doing what I like, what I'm able to do, and if I want to continue doing that as long as possible, and seeing people that are like in their 60s and 70s do things like a Hyrox, super inspirational, right? Because they've lived that journey probably their entire lives where they were at, continued some level of fitness, and even then, it's not that all of them have done that. Like one of the CrossFit champions in his age category, which is like I think in the 50s and above category, the Masters uh, competition, like he only started picking up CrossFit a couple of years ago. Now he's at the top of his age group, and you see other people that are doing Hyrox that maybe just started working out like 2 or 3 years ago, and they're in their 60s. And I think
Yep.
that's super cool. Um, and so, for me, it's like you can always start. It's never too late. But the sooner
Never.
you start, the better it will be.
Yes. Well said. Yeah. Never too late to start, but sooner is better. How old are you?
31,
31. Nice. When's your birthday?
December.
Cool. Okay. So you'll be 32 here coming up. Um, yeah. I love how you phrase that. You know, the past couple of years, and I'm sure this is similar for you. I have also started to think about, okay, what do I want to be able to do when I'm 40, when I'm 50, 60, so on, that sort of thing. And I would encourage listeners and everyone to really ask themselves that question, because sometimes I think people say, oh, when I'm 60 or 70, I want to be able to do this. They can only barely do it now.
Yeah.
Oh, well, if you want to be able to do that in 2 to 3 decades, you're going to have to far exceed that goal now. And if you don't, that's okay, but you need to start working to get there. And I think the more you can, like you said, the sooner you can start, the better. Bump up the VO2 max, bump up your endurance, bump up your strength, all nestled under stability, being able to control your motions, good mobility, flexibility, those things. And then you'll already be elite. You'll already be ahead of everyone else. And not that it's a competition, but it's just you'll be ahead of the curve, and you'll go to your yearly checkup, and your doctor will be like, "This is great. This is awesome. What are you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
And like we talked about at the beginning of the pod, there's also just the stress relief component. And then the relief of knowing that you're taking care of yourself. And so it all compounds, and you can just be so much happier and enjoy your life so much more if you just start now and get it done. And of course, supplement when you can, with
Where it makes sense. I don't think supplements make sense across the board, right? Like,
I agree.
I think if you could get adequate levels of creatine in your own diet, you should do that. But
Yes, 10,000%.
that's a lot of meat that you'd have to be consuming every day.
Right. Yeah. Well, sometimes I'll have people come up to me at work and they're like, what supplements should I take? Well, do you work out? Do you get good sleep? No. Okay. How's your diet? What are we doing for a diet? Turn those dials, because just like turning a radio station, you can turn those dials and just get so much more results versus your supplementation. That's just like your fine tuning, right?
Oh yeah, it's like the last like 5%, I'd say.
Yes.
There's this quote, right, that says something like genes load the gun, the environment pulls the trigger, essentially saying that like what you're predisposed to, like whether it's like high cholesterol or obesity or anything like that, like it might come regardless of like what you do or don't do, but it will definitely come if your lifestyle isn't you know aligned with prevention or delaying that inevitable. And so for me, it's super important knowing that like my family has predisposed to certain genetical or various diseases, like knowing that at the very least exercise and diet are not going to hurt me, but
Right.
by far they're going to be proven to delay or maybe mitigate that completely. And for me, that's a chance worth taking. Like that's worth the investment of time, energy, and resource.
Yep.
Um, so yeah.
Only we'll probably wrap here in the next couple of minutes. What a couple of questions though. Um, what keeps you grounded? Family. I know you exercise a lot, so I know that's a big part of your life. But what are you able to retreat to decompress? How do you manage all of it? That sort of thing.
It's an interesting question. I think again, like being able to participate in activities that I like to do um, helps. That keeps me on track, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know every couple of months there's an activity or an event that I'm partaking in. So like this past week was Hyrox, or for the past couple of months I've been training for that one. I benefited from the fact that it was a month after I did the Hyrox in Bangkok. So it
Mm-hmm.
was just kind of a continuation of the training and that
Yep.
lifestyle, right? And what that means is like prioritizing sleep that entire time, prioritizing diet, not drinking. Like there are a lot of these things, like when you talk about like being grounded, part of that is because like I have an outcome that I want to hit or like a
Yes.
goal that I want to achieve. And for me, I think it's super important to have goals as much as you can to make sure that you stay on the right track. You can obviously slip every once in a while, and it's
Sure.
fine to celebrate and go a little crazy. But it's also good to get back on track whenever you can. So Hyrox is done. So what's next for me? I have a team competition in August,
Sweet.
which is called Turf Games. Turf Games is a competition that travels around the world to different cities, and think of it as more like a high intensity plus kind of CrossFit style competition for 1 or 2 days. I think they started out of London, if I'm not mistaken. So I have a team. It's my girlfriend and I, and then another
Mm-hmm.
girl, another guy. So teams
Beautiful.
of four. And so now my shift is probably less on the cardio side of things because I'm not focused on a Hyrox right now, and more so on uh, short, quick burst, as well as heavier lifts.
Yep.
So now more so focused on CrossFit, if you will.
Yep.
So that I think helps from that standpoint in terms of like how do I always have something to look forward to or something to train towards.
Plus, it's
Um,
variety too. You're not getting
exactly.
overly bored. Like you get to switch it up every now and then.
Yeah, yeah. And then after August, I mean, Hyrox comes back to Singapore in November. Hybrid Health will be there. We have a booth at this one.
Let's
So
go.
we'll definitely be there for folks to test us out. Hopefully, uh, it helps them in their race as well. And so might shift back into High Rocks after that. So that's from like a physicality and kind of more so a lifestyle standpoint in terms of being grounded there. And then from a mental standpoint, like I said, I like scuba diving and I like exploring different parts of Asia. I like food.
Yeah.
So I just spent a couple of days 2 weeks ago in an island next to Bali in Indonesia, scuba diving with a couple of friends and my girlfriend. Um, this tomorrow, I'm heading to Penang, which is an island in Malaysia, known for food. Probably has the best food in the world, in my opinion.
Let's go,
Um,
baby.
and we'll be doing a lot of eating as a celebration for post Hyrox race. So I mean, I think it's important to reward yourself as well.
Sure.
Not just like fully pushing at 100% and living a super strict life, but also enjoying it along the way. So after that, full on turf games training, getting ready with my team, and then probably shifting into Hyrox after that one.
Let's go, man. Dude, I love it. I appreciate you doing this. We'll say some closing words after I hit stop here, but super grateful that you're able to come out here and chop it up with me for a little bit. I enjoyed getting to know you, and I'm a big fan, dude. I've heard nothing but great things from Hopwood. I've been following you and Hybrid Health, since its inception, and I'm going to keep doing so. And love the product. Looking forward to try it. I know Hopwood's going to bring some in September when I see him, so can't wait. I'll let you know what I think, and it's going to be good. I know it, but I really appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you thinking of us, and also for your support the past couple of months. It's been great.
Yeah, of course, man. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
What's up, everybody? It's Jake here, Fowler and Friends. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me and all of us over here at Fowler and Friends. So if you could please like, subscribe, comment, do all of that. But definitely subscribe, share the videos with your friends, keep on supporting the channel. Thank you so much. I'll catch you on the next one. Later.